All right. Oh my gosh. See, I already feel more awake now. Hello, you guys. We are live, and I need to keep. All right. We are live. Hello, 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 everybody. Give me a second. I'm pulling something up because I want to make sure that everything's coming through on y'all's side. All right, cool. So, hello, everybody. Say hey as you come in. Drop it in the comments. I'm so excited for this. This is going to be awesome. As you guys are coming in, let us know where you're coming from. Facebook, YouTube. How are you feeling this evening? I am a little tired myself. It's been a long day. I know. Oh, look, we already got a heart. I know everybody is still kind of, feeling all the feelings, and the energy is a little crazy right now. So let us know how you're doing. Check in with us. Let us know, are you feeling good? How are you, are you safe? All that fun stuff. And if you feel so inclined to do so, if you feel like you receive value from this show, if you love these ladies, feel like somebody else would receive value from hearing this woman or any other woman's story, then please, please, please share these episodes out so we can get more people in here. I can bring more women to this stage, and we can keep bringing our voices so that we can be heard. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to drop into this intro, and then I'm going to drop into this episode. And we're going to have a whole lot of fun for the next hour, you guys. So hello and welcome to the TUF Woman Table. This is the table where I invite some super badass, tough women like Blair here to take a seat, join in on the conversation, and share her amazing story. At TUF Woman, I believe that all women have the power within themselves to live an authentic life, free from fear, confident in who they are, and empowered to go out and create a life that sets their soul on fire. I share this belief by championing tough women who have walked through the fire, felt the fear, faced adversity, and kept pushing through it all. Women who now live the life they want as the woman they were created to be, and women who own their stories so other women can embrace and own theirs as well. Because as we all know, when you give yourself permission to own and share your story, you give someone else the same permission. And I just want to echo that before we go into this. I was telling Blair, and I was telling you I talked to a woman earlier today, and she was telling me her story, and it reminded me about why I do this show. And I just feel like this is a really good nugget to share for anybody who's out there, and especially because of what you do, Blair. I think this really ties in. You talk about helping women share their voice. She talked about, after she got done telling me her story, she said it felt really good to talk about that and just have somewhere to share my voice and share that with somebody. And for anybody who's out there, I don't know why I feel called, but I feel that this is important. If you feel like there's a story in your heart, and there is, and I'm sure Blair will testify to that, there's a story in your heart. Raise your voice, especially right now. I want to say this: with everything that is going on, you need to raise your voice right now. You need to share your story. You need to be a voice, because there are so many people out there that are voiceless in a sense. And I'm not saying they can't speak, but they just don't necessarily have the courage this moment. Not that they're courageous. It's just it's a deep thing to use your voice to speak up for yourself or somebody else. So she reminded me of how important it was and why I do this show, because at the end of the day, when we think about inspiring the whole world, we forget that sometimes the whole world consists of just inspiring one person. You really don't know what that catalyst is. So I challenge everybody to get up and share their story, use their voice, make a change, because you really don't know whose life you're changing by doing that. I know, like I said, especially right now, it's so important that we don't stay silent, that we use our voice for whatever means we can to achieve anything we can. So I felt like that was really important to say, because when she said that, I was like, oh my God, like that reminds me why I do this. And for anybody else out there who thinks that their voice will not make a difference, just the one person. Like when I do this show, it's just the one person. That's all you have to do, because you don't know who the one person is, and you don't know the effect you have on your life. And to end that, before I introduce Blair, a good friend of mine once said, your brand is like your handshake, but your legacy is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So your legacy is, and then it was Maya Angelou quote that she said, like Oprah is like, your legacy is what is all the good you do for people. Like that's all the people you do good for. So anyways, that's like my lengthy thing. But without further ado, I want to introduce my special guest. I'm so excited to have you on here. I feel like we just did the summit not that long ago. And you were doing this, right? Like we were her. So you guys, this is my friend and one of the most amazing powerhouse like publishers, authors. Like she holds it all: mom, speaker, wife, all the titles, writing coach. And I think you had massive impact coach too, which is so awesome. So yes, this is my guest Blair Hayse. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. Yes, wasn't long ago the roles were reversed. So
and I was in a podcast actually. They said it's so weird to be on the other side because I interview so many people, and I said, and I don't do enough of my own interviews, and so it's always fun. But all right, so if you will tell everybody a little bit about who you are and a little bit about all the titles, but primarily what it is that you do, because I know you have a main focus right now. So if you will just tell everybody a little bit who you are.
Absolutely. So yes, I'm Blair Hayse. I'm a mom. I have 3 children, 2 teenagers and 1 18-month-old. So I'm one of those crazy people that started over when it was almost over. So, but I love my kids. I live in Mississippi, and absolutely, I'm kind of your average gal. I love to shop and love to travel. And recently just rebranded my business to where we are focusing a lot on publishing and writing and creating more authors, giving people a platform for their voice. Very much what Ashley just said is just that we believe everyone has a story in them. And so we like to just help women and men tap into those stories and share those with other people. Because when you share your story, it first of all allows other people to feel safe in sharing their story. And then it also is, it provides just a very, it's like a healing modality. And I think it's just overlooked a lot of times, but it allows us to heal in ways that sometimes we don't even realize we need to heal. So, so before that, I had a career for 19 years in hotel business and in consulting. And my writing was more just a passion project. And then, as time kind of went on, I just felt more inclined to do the passion and less of the career. And so we as a company decided to rebrand and focus just entirely on the publishing and author aspect. So that's kind of my title all the way around nowadays, is being an author and a publisher. So.
Oh man. And I love it because of what you speak to, especially about like your books, She Is Magic. And I think it's beautiful. I think one of the beautiful, you're actually, I want to say the second or third person that I've seen come in who talks about the co-authoring of the books and everything. And what I think is beautiful about that, and what I highly encourage to anybody else who's out there maybe thinking about doing a book or something, is being able to collaborate with a group of women on something that's so powerful like that, or just a group of people in general. And I love that that's especially the kind of books that you really go out there, which I know you do single author publishing and all that, but like those collaborative books, those always just blow my mind. And one day, because one day it's gonna happen. I keep saying that. I say every time one day I'm gonna write a book, and then everybody who like publishes books are like, you should start now. You should start now. But anyway, so this is always the fun question. So what is that story that got you to where you're at now? What's that behind the scenes? Because something that I really wanted to emphasize with this show that I thought was really important is we always see the highlight reel, right? We always see like you and your lake pictures, like, which I'm so jelly of. Like, I'm just sitting there at work, just going, oh, look at her in her lake picture. But so we always see the behind the, the screen reel. I just totally lost my train of thought. We see that highlight reel on social media, and I think we often fall into the trap, especially women, of that comparison game. Like, oh my God, look what they're doing. Like, and what I wanted to do was show women that there is a behind the scenes to everybody. Like, yes, she's making 6-7 figures, but there's a behind the scenes to that. There was a before. I think it was Lizzo that said it took her like 11 years to hit success, to finally hit it. And that in that 11 years, she was doing all that stuff. So yeah, so what is your 11 years essentially? What does that look like?
Absolutely. Well, I will say that I grew up in a home that was very encouraging of the entrepreneurial life and very encouraging of even my writing, to be honest. So I had parents that really encouraged me to think outside the box and not always just think career driven. And so, um, as most people, you get into adult life and bills take over and life takes over. And so I just, kind of followed the career path versus the entrepreneurial path, and got married, had my two oldest children, and was living in a beautiful home actually on the lake. So I've always loved water. And then I kind of that's when I would say probably my real hardships began, or like what I consider what made me into who I am today. And that was just, my husband at the time was convicted of a crime, and he was put away for life. I didn't see it coming. I was very blindsided by it. My children were 18 months and 6 months. And so I at the time lost everything we had. We literally got rid of even the furniture. I remember the furniture being carted out of the house. We lost the home. I lost everything that I had worked hard for and that I thought I had with my white picket fence life at that point. And because I was a witness of the crime and didn't, well, I guess of the supposed crime, whatever, I vouched that it didn't happen because I was there, and it didn't happen the way they were portraying it. And so they actually took the children away from me. And so I had to fight for my own kids. And so I went through a very rough patch. I fought for my children. I actually fought for him for 2 years through the appeal courts. And then I was just drained. I was trying to be a mom. I was trying to work full time. I was trying to take, care of his case. There was just so many things on my plate that that I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I told him I wanted out of the marriage. And so we got a divorce. And at that point, I just turned to my career. Instead of dealing with all the emotions, I just, much like how someone turns to alcohol or drugs, but I turned to working. And so I became a workaholic and just really kind of just, yeah, buried myself in my career. I worked insane hours. And so then after many years of doing that, of course, that takes its effect. And so I started having unexplained seizures. I had a mini stroke at the age of 30. And just had a lot of health problems. And I remember sitting across from the neurologist, and he was like, "You need to quit your career. Like, if you don't quit your career, I'm not really sure that you're going to be around for your kids in 10 years." And I just remember thinking, I can't quit my career. I'm a single mom. I have no support. I had no support from the father, obviously. And like, it was up to me. And so it's just like, there's no way I can quit my career. That's all I know. And so I kept on going and just ignored him. And then a year later, I found myself just in a really deep cycle. I had a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. I was stressed out to the max. I wasn't sleeping. And I think like between all my medications for like my seizures and my mini stroke and everything, I think like I ended up totaling it up, and it was like 12 medications I was on at that point. And so one day, and it's one of those things I guess you never expect to get this low, or at least I didn't. But I actually tried to take my life. And looking back, I think, wow, I never thought I would get that low. I looked at other people and wondered how that could happen or how they could just do that. But it's not like I woke up that morning and thought, oh, today I'm going to take my life. Like, it wasn't like that. It was just a path that I kind of took and ended up there. And so after getting in the hospital for that, they asked me if I wanted to go to rehab. And I said, yes, show me, I'll sign. And I think that was one of the best decisions I ever made. It was 7 days that I absolutely did not check in with work. They took my phone from me. I could not check my emails. And so to deplug and just to make myself face my emotions, make myself face the grief, make myself face everything I had been bearing away with work, was life-changing for me. Because at that point I decided, okay, now I have to really deal with what's going on inside. And so after dealing with that, I just kind of came to the conclusion, like, okay, I have to make some changes, in how, especially my children, how I dealt with my children, how I helped them heal from this. And so I came out, I say that was my turning point. I came out and just completely felt like a different person. I kept my career for, I guess probably about 5 more years after that. But at the same time, I was looking for a way out at that point. And so I started kind of dabbling in consulting, business consulting, etc. And so that's how I kind of got into the business coaching aspect, was just through looking and kind of dabbling in that space. And I didn't even get really serious about the business coaching until several years ago. And then it was just kind of like, okay, either I'm going to go in or I'm going to just need to leave this alone, because I was like comfortable with my job and not really doing everything, how some people do when it's considered like a side hustle. And so I kind of just decided like, okay, I'm going to go all in. And I went all in. And of course, you're right. People just see now, they see the life I have now. And then they think, okay, well, she got there. Well, no, I didn't get there. It wasn't, it wasn't like an all glorious story. But I ended up going through a lot of severe financial loss because of my decision, because I left a job that was very comfortable, a salary that was very comfortable. And so to make that decision was very hard because our way of living was already up there with my salary. And so once again, I went through losing some things. I went through losing some vehicles and losing some nicer things that we had gotten through my salary. And so then I just remember I was crying one day in my room. I thought, this is the end. I can't do this anymore. Because like, I literally was just at my end. I was like, what else am I just need to go back to my job. Like, I can't keep doing this. And I called up one of my friends, and she was like, she had watched me dabble for years on the online business. And she said, you know what, dry your tears. You know what you're doing. So just get out there and do it. Like, you're the one holding you back. And that's not what I wanted to hear at that time, because obviously I was going through a rough time and I was crying, but it's what I needed to hear, because it gave me a kick in the ass. Like, okay, what's wrong with you? And so I thought, gosh, she's right. Like, I mean, this is no different than what I was doing in the corporate world and being paid, 6 figures for. Why can't I do this online? Like, I'm the one holding myself back because I'm not trusting myself. And so I remember I just decided that day, I literally that day wiped the tears off my face, put some powder on my face so people couldn't tell I was crying. And I went live and I sold out a program I just made up on a whim. And I was like, I'm going to do this. We're going to go all in. And from that point on, it just every month got better and better. And then, honestly, the business coaching was great for me. I was doing well. I was accomplishing a lot and had achieved a really good place, I guess, in the online space. But it wasn't fulfilling for me because it was just like my career, and I was already burned out from my career. And to be honest, it really didn't hit me that much until one day my daughter and I were in the car, and she's about to enter 9th grade. So she's all about right now deciding, like, what does she want to do with the rest of her life? Like, where's, what does she need to take in order to go to college, and et cetera, et cetera. And so she was like, Mom, what was your, if you could pick your dream job, what would your dream job be? And I was like, that's easy, to be a full-time author. And she was like, then why aren't you doing it? And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, whoa, here I am telling her, go after your dreams. You're the only one holding you back. Like, literally telling her, and I'm not living it. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, why am I not doing that? Like, I love to write. I went to writing college and got certifications. Like, I helped my mom write a book, my brother. Like, why am I not doing this? And so it was just that reality check, I think. Like, my daughter literally smacked me in the head with, and I was like, that's true. And so that was a decision point I made of like, okay, we're going to rebrand, and it might be the craziest decision I ever made, but we're going to throw it all to the wind and we're going to go for it. Because how can I tell her to do that if I'm not living it for her? So.
Oh my God, love that. I love that. But I want to first point out, you guys, that the struggles in your life is what gets you to where you're at. And what I think is great about your story, along with all the other stories, is that there was that point of like shattering, right? The point of shattering where life just everything that we know. And I think that happens for us because we're not on the path, right? Yep. And honestly, I think it happens right before it could have gotten worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like right before it could have gotten worse, because I remember like similar, like my marriage ended because of my ex-husband, well, my ex-husband was doing drugs, um but he was stealing checks and cashing fraudulent checks.
Wow.
And it
Mhm.
literally, I was very lucky because he was cashing them through my bank, but that never got brought into the case. Like, but
Mhm.
I think what happens is it would have gotten worse. I can't think of how many women
Mhm.
I've heard of this. Like, it got worse at one point. It got worse. And so I think we think when we're going through the shattering that, oh
Yes.
my God, like this is it. My life is ending.
Yeah.
Like my life is over. And then I thought what else was great. So, and this is really important to touch on. What was it like to sit there and finally like face your I'll call them demons, but just face that darkness head
Mhm.
on? Because this has been my own journey, and basically unlearning everything that I thought I knew and I thought I knew about myself, to realize like there's darker places to go and deeper depths. So
Yeah.
what was that journey like, to really like discovering who you were and dealing with those things that you had been holding down?
Well, I think it's terrifying. I mean, that's one of the first things. Like, it's very uncomfortable. It's not a place we want to be. And so um, I think people see spiritually awakening and they think of some glorious little awakening that happens. It's anything but glorious. It's sticky. It's ucky. It's nothing I would wish on people. But at the same time, I do, because the end result is so much better than all of the ickiness combined. But going through it is terrifying, because you have to look inside and see all the things you've pushed down, all the things you've avoided, all the things you've probably lied about and said it's not there. And you put on this pretense, or at least I did. I put on this fake face. Nobody knew I was struggling, like a very few at least. I think people were caught off guard when my shattering happened, just because they were like, "Whoa, where did this come from?" Because I showed up every day at work. I led people. You talked to the positive talk. Whatever. But deep down inside, I struggled. I struggled every day, and so like I think that having to face that and having to also shatter that perception that you've put up for other people, that fakeness you've put up, it's just kind of like a terrifying feeling. But at the same time, it's so liberating, because you were so bound by it, and so you feel like you have to keep it up, that when you finally let go of it, it's just like, wow, okay, this feels so much lighter. Like, I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to be fake. I don't have to sit around and act like I have it all together. They obviously know Blair lost Blair lost her shit. So it's all good. Like, it's just one of those things. Like, it's very liberating to have that, finally, that realization of like, okay, I'm face to face. I have to deal with this. And so to be brought that, I think we're conditioned in society that emotions are only good if they're good, right? And
Mhm.
so we're look at how we get onto children when they throw temper tantrums. Like, that's like some terrible thing. They're learning to express their anger. So like, I think like we are conditioned from even childhood that showing your emotions is not good if they're bad emotions. If they're over here in this little spectrum, you're supposed to just like push them aside and fake it. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from, is like learning, one of the exercises they even gave me in rehab that really helped me was to be able to really react in anger, to like, say everything I had on my mind. If that meant throwing something, I could throw something, like get it all out in a safe space. And for me, that needed to happen because I had been pushing it down. So I feel like that's the thing. Even as society, we need to really look at how we're educating our children even now, is that you have to put it in there. You have to let it go. And it's okay to show your emotions, good or bad, um, to do it in a safe place. And that's part of being human. Like, we're gonna have emotions, we're gonna have anger. Like, I mean, we'd be crazy to think we're not, right?
Yes. And Angela says, great story, Blair. Hello, Angela. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, Angela.
Angela is my lifelong well, friend first, but she has been with the show since the first episode, like first
Wow.
episode. She's maybe only missed a handful when she took her crazy break. from social media. No, I think that's, but so I wanted, diving a little bit further than that, I wanted to ask, what were some of the big like aha moments that you had through all of this coming to terms? Because like I think I remember going through a lot of the work that I've gone through recently and realizing that I was really like, I thought I was in this great space because I haven't been dating for a long time. And I'm like, I'm good. Like, I don't need it. Not that I don't need a man, but, I'm whole. And then I had like this big sit down and I deplugged from everything. And I realized that really what I was doing is that I was placing these obscenely high expectations, unrealistic expectations, so that I wouldn't have to worry about wanting to be intimate with someone because they're not going to, I cannot find anyone to fit the bill. So it's all good. I'm just gonna live my life. And so, but what that really was still that deep-seated fear that I was going to go through that rejection again. And I think the biggest smack in the face I had was realizing that I was trying to love myself through other people. Like that was huge for me. Like realizing that everything that I was pouring into other people, I was trying to pour into them in the hopes that it would pour back into me. And I was like, that's not true. Like I remember getting upset and I'm like, that's not true. And then I sat there, I'm like, so yeah, so what were some of those like deep revelations that were really like not necessarily smack to the face, but you're like, oh man, like this is oh shit. Like, oh shit.
I mean, I think for me, first of all, was just that I was a people pleaser. I tried to have people's approval. I tried to be the best for everybody, and so I pushed myself to very unrealistic expectations. And I think that fed my ego at the same time. And so, part of that was just learning that in dealing with this whole array of emotions, I found that like the emotions were just a mask. It was a mask for a deeper seated problem. Like once all of that healing took place, my perfectionism and my workaholic attitude still was there, right? So I was using my emotions to still feed something that was obviously a deeper issue. And I think that just came from a very long history of me wanting people to approve me wanting people to be okay with the way I did things or approve of the way I did things or think that I did a good job. And so I think that is one reason I struggled, even in the online space, was it's very hard to change. Like when I decided to rebrand and completely change space, it's how it would be viewed, right? And so it's kind of like that. I think for me was hard to accept because I didn't want to believe that was really me. I didn't think that I needed people's approval. I'm a pretty independent, strong woman as people would view me. And so I was like, no, there's just no way. Like I couldn't definitely want people's approval like that. But the truth is like I did. And I would throw all these other things to mask and give me the reason to do the things I was doing. But the deeper reason behind it is I had to deal with my worthiness. I had to deal with the fact that I had to be okay with me. And it doesn't matter if someone else approves of me deciding to do something, it's okay. Like I decide what's best for me. I decide what's best for my career or my business or my life. And it doesn't matter what other people think of that. Like they're not paying my bills. They're not living my life. And for me, that was very hard to, and there's still days I struggle with it, right? Because that was just a very long, a problem that came from very, very far back. So, and I see that even in my lineage. Like I was talking to someone the other day, like it's crazy to see the generational things that are passed on to us, and I see, especially in my mom's side of the family, like a very strong pattern of needing that approval, needing to be, in a certain pattern to be accepted and to be loved and to be worthy. And like, I want that to stop. I want that to stop with me so that my daughter maybe won't struggle as much, that she will be her own person, that she will be able to live her own life and not be so worried or so consumed with making sure that she's accepted by everybody else. And so I think like that too is something that was a big aha for me, was just how that's been passed down and overlooked.
And I love that you talk about that, because actually we had this conversation on a show last week, but we talked about the epigenetic side of it, which is how it's actually passed on to how your genes are expressed through that passing on.
Mm-hmm.
But that was similar to what it was like in my female lineage. And I think this is really key to talk about for a moment, because I don't see this talked about at all. And it's funny because you can actually read about generational trauma, even so far as like the Bible, that it's passed down, like the sins of the father will be passed down like through the generations and stuff like that. But I remember growing up and seeing that, and it wasn't until I got older that I realized the correlation. In my family, women were oftentimes the main caretakers. Not saying the men in my family don't do a lot, because I love the men in my family. But, it was the women who held it together, and the women were just expected to go and be okay with whatever was going on. And even if life was crazy, we were supposed to hold it together. And I remember growing up, my mom was very like emotional. And I remember my grandmother going, she's like, I just don't understand your mother sometimes. She's just always having a breakdown. And I'm like, but then I remember growing up and seeing, and I was like the opposite. I was like a lot like we said, it's like just no emotion. I don't even think I cried till I got married. That's sad, isn't it? I don't think I cried till I got married. So you're talking about mid-20s, maybe I cried angry tears, but I'm talking like full blown, like feeling pain in my body, crying. And I don't think that we talk enough about how sometimes what you're taking on, which is why I love that you talked about the inner work, because I feel like that's my message now, is like, do the work, like do the inner work. We get so caught up in having to determine our outside success that we forget that the outside success is a direct result of the inner work we do to bring that into our lives. But I realized that we had this pattern of pleasing and taking care of other people to validate our own worth. And I love that you talk especially about your daughter. I was the same way. It's like, no, man, I don't want my daughter to validate her worth through like another man, and that's a hard thing to come to terms with, because then you really have to sit and look at yourself and you go, oh my God, what am I doing that she's going to take on? Right.
Exactly. And that's not ever very pretty. Like, I sat down the other day and wrote out a list of like, what are the things that I can see if I was looking in the mirror that I know I don't want my daughter to take on, because those are generational patterns that I need to start now doing the inner work so that she doesn't have those patterns. And that's nasty. It's not good. I was telling my assistant, literally, I sent her a message and I'm like, this shadow work is hard.
Oh my God.
Dealing with this is not easy, because you don't want to see it, but at the same time, I would rather deal with it than have her spend her life having to deal with it too. So if that means me doing the inner work so that she doesn't, obviously I'll take that on. So, just like you said about the inner work, I think there's so much we don't see that a lot of times. If we don't do the inner work, I always said that I could come back to the same crossroads 100 times, and I would still pick the path that I shouldn't pick. It was like, I did it for years. It was just like, why would I do this? Why would I keep picking this path? And so I don't know. I think when we're not willing to do the inner work, if we keep ending up at the same path, if we keep ending up in the same situation over and over again, that's a sign that next time you get to the crossroads, think twice before picking the way you usually pick. For me, it was just I kept doing it over and over, no matter how many times I was given the crossroads. I picked the wrong path every single time. And, I think that's where when the day that I ended up, crying and being like, I'm just going to go back to my job. And literally my friend was like, no, I was at that crossroads and I was just about to take the other path again. And it was just usually you're going to shatter right before the breakthrough. And so it's part of getting through that. Or are you going to let that shattering push you back to your comfort zone? Or are you just going to keep on pushing through the shattering? Because if you keep pushing through the shattering, the other side is beautiful. It's like reaching the promised land, but having to go through the desert and having to go through the plagues It sucks. And so I think people give up. They give up right before the breakthrough sometimes. And, if you're not willing to do that inner work, you're just going to keep coming back to that same crossroads over and over again. It's just the way that's just our path. That's our destiny, right? We're going to keep repeating until we learn the lesson. And like I said, I'm hard headed. So like it took me forever to even pick the right path. Like,
like, oh, look, what's this again? Oh, that was dark and scary. We're just going to go down here. Nice lighted path. And
yeah.
I think that's where people get a little bit stumbled up. And I want to acknowledge Artesia said hello, and she shared. And Artesia, holler at me later because I want to talk to you about coming on the show like soon. So please reach out to me, or I'll DM you. I don't know. One of us will get there. But before we pivot into the next question, I really wanted to just check back on that inner work, because I wanted to tie this in, because I think this is a really interesting correlation that needs to be brought up. So you talked about all the health things that you were going through. And oftentimes what I've seen is people have these horrendous health issues and they don't realize that it's actually directly tied to whatever you're not dealing with inside. And I say this from like a very personal experience. I had a friend whose brother, both lungs failed and he had to have double lung transplants. And we went to clean his house out while he was up getting the lung transplant. And he walked into his house and it was slam full of shit everything that you could hold on to in a lifetime was in this house. And I turned to my friend and I said, oh my God, like no wonder he can't breathe. No wonder his system is shutting down. It's dirty and dusty in here. And I said, I can't freaking breathe. And I said, no wonder he had, his lungs are full. So I have to ask, like, where were those physical ailments, like, what were the things that were really creating the manifestation of your physical ailments?
Well, so a lot of my ailments came from the head. So like migraines, the mini strokes, seizures, they were all a nervous system related. And to be honest, when I did the inner work, so backstory, like, so I said that I was on 12 medications. And then my shattering happened. I went into a rehab. When I exited rehab, and I was only in there for 7 days, but when I exited rehab, I was only on one medication. And then with the years that's passed, I'm on none now. But, it's surprising to me how much of my ailments got better in a relatively very fast time when I began to do the inner work, when I began to deal with, for me, it was grief. For me, it was like burying all of my emotions and not talking about them. And so it manifested in migraines, it manifested in seizures, it manifested in, mini strokes. And so like mine was all things that I had just buried down and just wasn't willing to deal with. I wouldn't talk about my grief. I wouldn't, people wouldn't know that I was like dealing with grief, or that I was hurting inside, or that I went home and cried myself to sleep most nights. They didn't know any of that. And so I think like not dealing with those emotions built up and built up and built up. And it manifested in a way that like was obviously very severe. But I just wasn't willing to look it in the eye until I had to.
And I just felt that was really important, because I think there are a lot of people walking around going, why do I have all this stuff happening to me? Like, why am I always sick? And I want people who might come across this to stop and ask yourself, like, what could be the real reason why I'm constantly dealing with this?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important for people to understand, that what you don't deal with will deal with you at some point.
That's
in
so
a
true.
very realist way, and you will have no choice but to be dealt with. And I don't say that to be mean, but you literally will have no choice. I think a lot like you, I had a doctor staring me in the face going, if you do not find a freaking way to release your stress, because I wasn't dealing with it, he said, you are going to die. He said, if you make it to 26 and don't have a heart attack, I will be amazed. And to hear that at like 24, when you've got, my daughter was only like 8, my son was like 2 or 3, that breaks your heart. You're like, like, oh my God, I can't. So I say that because I feel like if anybody's watching this, My hope is that if you're going through something, especially like, life, man, because we're all going through life. We're all going through this human experience, this entrepreneurial journey, but we always have to remember to be graceful with ourselves because we're going through life first. Check in with yourself. I think that's really important. So the next question I want to ask you is, and how was it to really pivot? Like, how was it to really start living in that space where you were actually meant to be, like that? This is my dream job. Like, this is what I actually get to wake up and do every day, because, we see the journey, but it's like, what does it mean to walk through and have the breakthrough? So what did that look like for you?
I still have a hard time believing it. Sometimes it's very magical and sometimes it feels unreal. And so there's sometimes that like I literally am like, wow, is this my life? Like, did I actually manifest what I really wanted in life? And I'm living it. Because I struggled for so long and so hard that, I think like I didn't think it would ever come. And so when you're living in it, when this is your life, I think there gets to be a point that you realize it's almost like your viewpoint changes. You struggle and you struggle and you struggle, especially in the entrepreneurial world. And then when you have that breakthrough, it's like you shift perceptions. Because before I would just really, it was like painful to make a launch or painful to sell something. And then after you're living in your alignment, you're living that dream. If you need to launch something or you need to sell something, it's like you're in a completely different mind frame than you were way back there. And I think that's been kind of eye-opening for me. Is like, if let's say we have an unexpected expense, instead of whereas I used to be panicked and that would like throw my stomach in knots and I would wonder how in the world I could launch something, what I could sell to make that happen. Now it's just like I wake up, I'm like, okay, well, so I just need to get a new client, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. And it's like a no-brainer for me. And so like I think like sometimes I sit back and I think, wow, did I really just create this life of like it's that easy for me that it's a give and take? It's, showing up, it's giving of myself, doing what I love, and being able to still spend time with my family. I'm not working 120 hours a week like I was in my corporate job. Like I'm sleeping at night. I'm not wasting my time lying awake worried. And I think it's just having that flip side that there's still times I think, wow, is this really my life? Like, did I make this happen? But it also pushes you to reach higher goals. Like, I mean, I can tell you right now that even though I've achieved what maybe was my goal 5 years ago, I have goals for the next 5 years because I always want to push. My dad always said, like, you're not ever standing still. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. There's no such thing as standing still. And that's the truth, because I always am pushing myself. Like, what's the next step? What's the next thing? What's the next thing we can do to help people, and to bring more people into the platform, to give more people the ability to use their voice and to be published. Because I always want to be moving forward and I always want to create that legacy, just like you talked about at the beginning. I want to have that legacy if I was, to die, that I know I helped others and that they reaped a benefit off of sharing their story and been giving that platform for a voice.
All right. So this is a new question I have. And this was inspired by the podcast I was on. And she said her question was, for anyone out there who's got like a mess and they're like, I want to make my mess into my message. Like, how do I turn that into it? And I remember saying to her, like, your mess is your message. That was really inspired by a woman that I knew. She was on one of the original episodes, like in the very beginning. And she went through a lot of life, like a lot. And she came to me like a month and a half or so after the show. And she said, I'm in this group and I want to share about what I'm going through because it's just so detrimental right now. And I just need to like let it out. And she said, I have some of these ladies, and I don't think they're trying to be mean, but they were telling her, like, oh, don't share that because it's going to be too messy and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, listen, I said, you are healing. And I got kind of really blunt. I said, it's like spiritual work. Healing is not all magic and rainbows, okay? It's not all rainbows and freaking unicorns. And some days you're on the floor and you're in the fetal position and you're crying because it hurts. And that's real life. And that's what people need to see. And when she asked me that question, I said, your mess is your message. That's it. Like, there's nothing else you need. You don't need to tweak it. You don't need to make it look pretty and wrap it in a bow and go, oh, well, you know, there were some bad days, but there were great days too, because that's not how it is. It's not like you say, well, I got a little bit of shadow in me, but it's a lot of light around here. Like, so if you were to name, if you were to tell people like what your message became out of your mess, what would that look like?
I think that it comes back to the whole reason I created the She Is Magic series is my slogan, step into your magic. Your magic is your message. And sometimes that message can look so messy. It can be the worst possible thing. I've had women that have shared stories of so many different calibers. Some that I literally, every time I edit the drafts of the chapters going into the books, I cry through all the chapters because I'm like, oh my goodness, like I can't imagine that this woman lived through this. And but yet she found the magic inside of her. She found the ability to rise above it, to be a warrior, to keep going, to show up and share her message, which blows me away because that itself is vulnerability. That itself takes a lot of courage. And so, I would just encourage anybody that's out there that's worried about their message not being pretty. None of our messages are pretty, right? And that's what makes them real. That's what makes them authentic. That what makes how we all relate to them, because you never know who is out there who is in a very messy situation and thinking they're all alone. It's only them. Maybe no one's ever felt like this before. And your message comes along just at the right time, even if it just changes that one person's life. If you had not shared that message, what would have happened? So, like, think about it in those terms. You're helping and inspiring other people whose lives are just as messy, because we are messy, to share their message, to understand their message, and maybe even to rise above their whole messiness that they have going on and see their message. So I think, like, stepping into your magic is my whole slogan. And this is the reason I created the She Is Magic books, because I wanted everyone to realize that there's magic within you if you just realize it and you share it. And then it helps other people have the same space to see their magic within them that maybe they don't see.
Oh, I love that. Makes me happy. Angela says, where were you a week ago when I published my first book?
Yay, Angela, congrats.
Yeah, now you know. I remember when she texted me and was showing me the cover, I was so proud. I was like, look at you. Look at you just killing it over there. Yes, that just made like my whole heart smile. I love that. And I agree 100% with what you said. I think it's really important that we understand that our struggle is what somebody else needs. And that's a hard thing to see when you're in it. Like I had to explain that to my daughter. She went through her own struggles in January. And I said, one day you're going to understand why you went through this and you're going to help somebody else. And I said, I know it doesn't look like that right now because you're like, how do I even help myself at this moment? I remember going through that in my divorce, and my daughter started dealing with her stuff. I was like, oh my God, like I can't even deal with my own shit. Like, how do I help her out? But and it's in those dark spaces that I found that I've been able to offer the most help, as whether that's coaching somebody or just as a person talking to someone. That's what people need. People, and I think especially right now, I want to go back to what we're doing right now. I think the one thing we need to realize is, while yes, there is all this disparity and there is oppression and all these unjust situations going on, at the end of the day, we all have we are all really like one. And I don't say that to negate any of the other stuff, because I don't want anybody thinking that I'm like overlooking anything. But we're all going through these crazy situations, and I think that the ability, like you said, to talk about these situations and that's the other part I want to talk about. Just touch on. Listen. Just the ability to listen and give someone space is also life changing. So I totally love what you said. I think it's so important. So for anybody out there struggling to really bring their message out to the world, just start talking. I think that was one thing, that was just start talking. If you want to write a book, just start writing. If you're like me and the thought of sitting down and writing for hours makes your hand already start cramping, do voice notes. I've got voice notes on my phone.
Exactly.
Yeah, just do something but talk. I think my most liberating thing was just coming on and having lives with people. I remember someone asked me, like, how'd you get started doing lives? I said, I literally just push play and started talking to people. I don't even know what I was talking about, but I was talking to people and I went. And I think that that's the place where people need to start. So, second to last question is, if you could give someone, if someone came up to you and said, okay, well, what are 3 pieces of advice or tips you have for me going through something, similar, whether that's like the spiritual journey, like what would be those 3 pieces of advice you would have for somebody?
My first advice is to take it at whatever space you need it. So, when I was going through some very difficult times, my neighbor came and he was like, "Well, just take it a day at a time." And I says, "I can't even imagine taking it a day at a time. For me, that was too overwhelming at the time." And he says, "Well, that's fine." He says, "Then just take it 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time, one breath at a time." And that was some of the most profound advice I got, because at that time, it was literally, I felt going breath by breath. And so, take it at the space you need it. Give yourself the space you need. And if that means taking it breath by breath, take that. Eventually, you'll be up to where you're taking it day by day and you won't even believe that you're there. But give it the space you need. My second piece of advice would be get a really strong support circle. Get people that are in your inside loop that you can call no matter what. And you can vent to, you can talk to, that's going to be there for you, and really support you and help you and instill in you to see, maybe just, even if it's just to give you a listening ear, right? Sometimes that's all we need. We don't need a solution to our problems. We just want someone to hear us out, and find those people that can be in your corner. And then number 3, I would say just find, even if it's just 5 minutes out of your day, list out 5 things that you're grateful for. No matter how bad your life's going or how many things you lose, think about 5 things that you're absolutely grateful for that day, no matter what they are. And with time, your perception really changes, to where you're not, I think, drawn to the fact of just exactly what you're going through. You're more drawn to the fact that you see things a little bit differently. So I could be super emotional and having a bad day, and everybody tick me off that I come in contact with. And then I could see a flower and think, oh, wow, look at that flower. That's really pretty. It's like, whereas before I might not have noticed that, right? But if I'm taking the time to journal and I'm taking the time just to even list out 5 things I'm grateful for, I notice the small things in life, like the very small things, even if it's somebody pausing to let me in traffic, that I'm like, oh, wow, that was nice of them. So, just taking the time to shift perception, it really helps when you're going through an overwhelming time.
Mm. I love that you talked about the flower. I found 11 cents the other day. I was so excited. I said, oh, look at me, 11 cents.
I love it when I even find a penny. I'm like, oh, look, a lucky penny.
I know, right? And somebody said to me, they're like, why are you getting excited at 11 cents? I said, it is 11 cents. I said, I'm 11 cents richer. I will need that one day. You don't know. I said, somebody might need 11 cents. I said, you don't know. I said, be freaking happy that money just came to you. I think that was something, talking about like mindset shifts. I had a woman talk to me and she said, you should feel just as happy about 11 cents as you do about $11,000. She said,
exactly.
Not change. She said, you should be just excited. So I learned to start getting excited about any money that came my way, like a penny on the ground. Look at you. Like,
exactly.
That was a big one for me. So tell everybody, I'd like for you to tell everybody a little bit about some of the books, because we've got just a little bit of time before we go into the last piece. So if you want to tell everybody a little bit, especially since Angela said, where were you a week ago when I published my first book? So if you will tell everybody a little bit about the books that you do publish and what kind of like authorship opportunities you provide for people.
Sure. So my She Is Magic series is a collaboration piece. We usually have a minimum of 15 authors that come on board, and we put together, each author puts together a chapter talking about a piece of their story, a piece of their magic, and then we come together and we publish it. So She Is Magic launched April 3rd, the last book. And it reached #1 bestseller in, I believe it was 5 different categories, #1 new release in 10 different categories, and international bestseller in 2 different countries. We were really pleased. That was in the middle of the pandemic, so I had no idea what to expect. As a matter of fact, I kind of thought I was crazy for launching it. But then She Is Magic 2 just is underway, and we hope to launch that sometime in August. And then we'll have another one in the fall that will launch. So we'll start the next one probably in September. and we'll probably be looking at around end of November launch. So they're relatively fast-paced collaboration projects. And yeah, super excited. They're very affordable. And I want to give as many women as possible the ability to jump on the platform and be able to tell their story. I'm very grateful for the fact that a lot of my authors have returned and either joined the collaboration project again, or they've contracted and done a solo book with my company and published their own book. So I love having repeat authors, and that's been exciting for me.
So, and this is and then the last part will obviously be, I want you to tell everybody, but this is one other question that I want to actually start asking because I think it's a good one. So where do you see yourself going? You said you got goals in 5 years. So I like to show that there's still continued growth for everybody. So where do you see yourself going?
Well, I definitely, in 5 years, want to have a really large publishing business. I want to be able to manage a lot of different collaborations. We're looking now at dealing with maybe some coaches and some different entrepreneurs of creating books for their own communities. And so, for example, we're in contact with someone right now who's looking at doing one for her retreat, and she's going to just have all of her women be on board with the book. We'll go through the process, and then at the retreat launch the book. So we're thinking about doing this with retreats, masterminds, different things that coaches could pitch that and have their own communities do a book. So I'm really excited about that. I hope to have really grown and have a really great support system of other coaches working alongside Blair Hayse Publishing so that we can push out as many collaboration books as possible. We're also founding a nonprofit organization, which I haven't even announced this publicly, so y'all are getting inside information. But we filed the paperwork a few weeks ago, and we are launching that, and that's going to be aimed of helping, especially just the literary world, as far as like maybe providing books for schools, maybe working with underprivileged youth and being able to give them opportunities and scholarships and writing abilities and writing being published, those type of opportunities. And so we're super excited about the nonprofit. So that's on the roll. And we, like I said, we haven't even announced that yet, but I think that that's going to be really game changing probably for my company, to be honest. And I'm super excited about that partnership that I'll have with the nonprofit.
That is awesome, man. Like that is beautiful right there. And there, I think that's my favorite part about sharing stories is showing that there's it's not just the, the behind the scenes and the highlight reel and everything, but it's like, where are you going in life? I want to remind people that you have such a long life, hopefully, and you have so much potential to do anything and everything you want. And if your life doesn't look like what you want it to right now, you have every possibility to change it.
That's right.
At the drop of a hat. I promise you, at the drop of a hat.
Yep.
All right. So tell everybody a little bit about where they can find you, how they can connect with you, what are the best ways, and how they can work with you.
Absolutely. Look me up on Facebook. You can definitely send me a friend request at Blair Hayse. And you can connect with me on my business page, which is also underneath Blair Hayse. And definitely encourage you, reach out to me on either of those platforms. I will be the first to tell you I'm not on a lot of platforms. So if you look for me on Instagram or Twitter, you'll find me, but I'm like not even there. I don't even check my messages over there. So like Facebook is the best way to get a hold of me. Or you can drop us an email at blairhayse at gmail.com. And I absolutely personally respond to all of my emails. And definitely can send you over if you're interested in publishing a book, especially a solo book. We have a really quick form you can fill out and we can give you a custom quote. And if you're interested in collaborations, we can definitely have that talk too.
All right, you guys, and please reach out. Blair is freaking awesome. I had the honor to do a summit with her, which was absolutely amazing. I meant to ask you, do you remember what the final tally was on that summit that you did?
I think we had close to 350 attendees.
Hell yeah. See, there you go, you guys. I just remember like the panel you get, the dashboard you gave us, looking at all the speakers that had signed up. Like, look at all those people. I was like, look at that.
Yeah, the summit rocked. I was really, I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was really shocked at how well it did. Yeah, we just had an amazing panel of speakers. So
yeah, it was awesome. It was a good time. All right, you guys. So I want to take a moment to highlight the next 2 panels coming up since we're going forward into that. So we are going to be hosting I'm going to be hosting domestic violence panels for the next 2 weeks. And I think this is really important given the state that we're in at the moment, especially. So I've still got open slots on any of the panels. So I welcome anybody who has either a history with domestic violence or experience, or just, wants to get on and talk about it, to please come on. Anyone is welcome, male, female, anybody is welcome to come on and share their experiences, stories, anything that would be beneficial to someone who's potentially in this situation. I know that with COVID, especially, domestic violence rates around the world have risen tremendously. And sadly, I was listening to something today, and it was the new Jim Crow. I was listening to it, and it talked about how mass incarceration, how we didn't view it as the societal problem that it really was. And it reminded me of something that another thing that I heard, but it was talking about, it's like when you have this tremendous amount of unrest and you have all these things, it no longer becomes a people problem, it becomes a humanity problem. And I think that it is our responsibility, for those of us who have walked the path, to come back and now begin helping people, because we have to really start looking at ourselves and the things that we're not looking at, right? Like, look at where we're at because of all the things that we've tried to put under the rug. We really have to start looking at these darker shadow aspects of ourselves so that we can bring light and healing, and allow, make it so that people don't have to fear for their lives anymore, and that we really are in a space of true equality and love and all that other stuff. So I ask that anybody who wants to come on and share their experience or just share their voice and be a part of an amazing panel. 16th and the 23rd will be the domestic violence panel, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope everybody can make it. But thank you so much, Blair, for being on.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
I love this. See, I told you, I was like, I'm going to get on here and I'm going to wake right up. So anyways, you guys, I will see you guys Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please make sure to click get reminder on these broadcasts so you don't miss an episode. And go ahead and check us out on YouTube and iTunes. Rate us. Give us lots of likes. And I will see you guys on Tuesday. Bye, y'all.
Bye.